Hey everyone, how's it going? So for this one, I wanted to try something a little bit different where instead of going through a draft, I wanted to review a match I played recently. It was pretty interesting, and I've always thought that reviewing your games and matches was a really important part of improving. Yeah, I wanted to jump into one and sort of share my process a bit with how I go about doing that. So the one we're going through right now is currently 2-0, since instead of finishing it, I'm making this video. Um, and so we got some random band stuff. So we're going to start off by taking a look at the deck, since I think knowing what's in the deck is really important for informing decisions during the games. So in this one, I ended up with a Broker's Ascendancy early on, and then pick some fixing. And all my playables didn't end up exactly where I wanted, but the general plan is I have some early defensive creatures, and then I have some decent, libation combat tricks. They are paired with this random included fish, since libation fish is kind of a fireball of sorts. Also picked up two informants. Again, works great with the fish. And just in general are good 2-drops. Mini citizen sub theme going on for the civil servant. Not super excited about this, but I think this is fine given that I could be a little bit weak to some of the flyers given that my early drops, I do have some good aggressive ones, but as a whole aren't especially aggressive, so I'm probably not racing the flyers deck early. So I don't mind having this as just, a random creature. And I wanted to keep my creature count fairly high because of the Broker's Ascendancy, which of course needs bodies to function. At the top, just a couple big bodies and a flyer. And then I'm including the Boon of Safety to go along with, again, some of these are good attackers, so I don't mind having that to trade off, but also it works with giving the shield counter to a fish, and also with the Metropolis Angel here. So this is what the deck looks like. And so yeah, let's jump into it. So we're going to be reviewing this match 2 here. Really, games 2 and 3, I think, were the really interesting ones, but game 1 still has some stuff in it, and also informs some of the decisions from the later games, so we're going to take a look. I believe I was on the draw here. So opening with just a plains and a bunch of stuff, but really, again, I have a one-lander. My deck's 3 colors. I don't have blue to cast this, so as strong as Informant into fishes, which if you guys haven't done or seen that before, it's pretty ridiculous and pretty hard to beat. But again, I have to throw this back. I don't have lands. So moving forward here, I end up with this. Not ideal, but I do have, again, I can't throw it back. It has lands, it has spells. And again, it has one of my best spells. So if I get lucky and spike a blue source, then I have this sort of double striker into Broker's Ascendancy plan and a libation to back it up. So from here, throw back a forest, and here we go. So opponent goes plains, go for a citizen, plays turn 2 informant, discarding, I believe, a mountain, okay. And so then here, we go draw, play plains, pass. Opponent puts a counter on it. Again, here, libation doesn't really help. I'd have to libation here and trade, and I end up with a 1-1, which is fine-ish, but again, pretty bad use of a libation, I think, so I can hold off on that. Just take 3. I'm super lucky, so I spike an untapped blue source, where I only have, I think, maybe 1 or 2. I forgot what the number is. Maybe 3, but I think no more than that. So super, super lucky here. Just slam the Ascendancy, get my counter, and pass. And here, pretty important, pre-combat, my opponent drops the plains and swings. And this is where I think I make a poor decision. But so I was considering whether I want to block. On one hand, I'm certainly not going to trade off for the 2-3, or the 3-2 rather. But I might be blocking a 1-1 here. So the one damage I don't really care that much about. I guess on one hand, it's always, every damage can matter, especially when your opponent's attacking you, but that's not the main decision-making factor for me here. For me, there's 2 things that are affecting my decision. Firstly, that my opponent played a plains pre-combat. And secondly, the fact that I have a Broker's Ascendancy means I really am kind of motivated to keep my creature on board. And so they're kind of conflicting factors. And the reason the planes is relevant is because the most common trick that I would expect my opponent to have here is For the Family. And because they pre-combated their planes, if I block here and they For the Family, then there's some chance that they don't have a follow-up play because they only have one green source. So there's some amount of extra value gained if my creature dies when I block. Now, also, without knowing my opponent in the dark, they're probably not making this attack unless they have a combat trick. So I should have just assumed like 95% that they have the combat trick here. And I believe not blocked. I think this block is actually pretty bad in hindsight, but I end up making it with the idea that if they do use the For the Family, that it was going to disrupt their play and buy me some more time. And I, again, notice next turn I am going to get a shield counter dude with a Broker's Ascendancy, but at the same time, if I just waited here, I would have multiple good blocks, a shield counter guy and this guy. And then if they have like tricks, even if they played another creature out, then I'm still very likely in good shape. So yeah, I think this was pretty bad. Some things that maybe you'd consider from here as well are like, even if you play the Voice and then they have like Hold for Ransom, that gets really, really bad too. So yeah, I think this was a bad block, poor decision by me. But so they do play the For the Family, dies. And again, so notice my idea still kind of worked out for me. That said, again, you can't base your decisions on whether or not it worked or didn't work so much as if it was good or bad based on the information you had at the time. And so yeah, I think that was a mistake. I don't think that was a good block. And yeah, it was just, if I had an extra creature here and was at 13 life instead, my opponent had a For the Family in hand, and I have this shield guy and a 3/4. Again, assuming it gets a counter from the Broker's Ascendancy, I think I'm in a better shape than I would be here. But anyways, so it goes here. Opponent plays the Rocco, X equals 2, grabs a Civil Servant, and just Sentence, which I don't know why they pre-combated that, if that was the plan. But they did. I get my free block, take 1, no big deal. And so from here, note that I now have an Informant, and my draw step was Initiate. Again, this was another reason why the Initiates are in the deck. They're just bodies to pump up for when I have the Ascendancy. Not that you have it every game, but it's an efficient thing to play, and if you can put a counter on it, it's great. So here, play both my creatures. I have Interaction in hand. My board's bigger than theirs. I have an Ascendancy. And pretty much I just get carried super hard because I hit an island on turn 3 and I have a Broker's Ascendancy. And like I said, this is probably the least interesting of the games. Despite my bad block, I still win because I'm super lucky. So here, opponent's just playing some stuff. They played Pinions here to try and fly over. Oh, I can't highlight things. Pinions here, trying to fly over the Civil Servant and swing in. And they're trying to lifelink it. So here I have Run Out of Town. I run out of town, targeting the Pinions so it no longer has flying. I get free blocks. I just put it all in front. I don't know what they could have. I guess they have 1 red open, so it probably doesn't really matter at all. But just throw it all open, or throw it all here. I guess they could have +1/+0 first strike, but I've not seen that card cast yet. So actually, I guess you could make the argument maybe that I shouldn't put the Informant in front for that reason. But either way, I think I'm good here. So here, and I just swing with everything because, they don't have good attacks. They put the Pinion on top, by the way, from the Run Out of Town, but, they're getting hit for 1 million here. Even let's say, okay, firstly, they're dead if they take everything. So we're attacking for 12, 17 plus another 3, so actual 20. My smallest is a 3/7. My biggest is 6, I think. And so, yeah, they're just super, super dead. And I have the option to pump this still as well. They just don't even block and they're dead. So, going on to game 2, and game 2 and 3 I think were the most interesting of these. Here I get this one. I'm on the draw again, And so here I have to decide if I want to keep or mull. And looking at it, I don't have green mana, and the majority of my cards that affect the board here are green early on, right? So I have 2 3-drops and the Libation. I have a 4-drop that's white that's fine, not great defensively, but not too bad versus what they were doing, right? It has a shield counter to block the 3/2s and stuff. Maybe not good versus Civil Servant. And so, yeah, I decided to throw it back because, again, I don't think that I can just gamble that I hit a green source. And even if I hit a green source, hand is pretty good, but it's not incredible. I was thinking that my deck is capable of a little bit better. Sometimes when you have really good high impact cards like the Broker's Ascendancy in your deck, that's something that can affect your mulligan decisions, because if you have basically if you have cards that are super high impact, then getting another look of 7 cards has more value than if all your cards do the same thing, right? Also, like, thinking about how your deck affects mulligan decisions, if you have decks with like 5 Throngs in them or 4 Throngs or something like that, you can mulligan way more aggressively because any hand with 1 Throng in it has 5 Throngs in it, right? And so stuff like that can affect your mulligan decisions. That said, again, I decided to throw this back. I know some people would keep it, and I do think it's pretty close. Yeah, so we mulligan this one. Here I end up with this, which I have a green source, I have a hideout, which can get blue or white. And so I decide that I want to keep this one. I think this hand is going to be fairly reactive, so note that here I'm going to throw back the Server. I'd rather keep my interaction, my 1 creature, and then the Libation in case I need it in combat, because I expect my opponent to have combat tricks coming out of the Naya colors. So from here, opponent goes tap land, and here I already have a decision to make, right? Because I have 2 drops in my deck that are white, and if I play the Broker's Ascendancy getting planes here, and I also have a white card and a blue card in my hand. So if I get planes and I draw one of those 2 drops, then I can play it. 2 of them even have Connive with the Informants, which might help me hit my 3rd land drop. So there's a real argument to doing this. The downside of doing it is that it makes me commit to either blue or white right now, and it pulls a land out of my deck. So with this hand, I very much want to continue drawing lands, right? Not forever, of course, but in the immediate future. And so I like to play Forest turn 1 instead. And the idea being twofold: that firstly, if I draw either a plains or an island, then I know that the hideout is there to grab the other one. And so it allows me to have a higher likelihood of having all 3 colors, which I think this deck has enough blue cards in it that I do want to make sure that I consistently have all 3, not even just because I have one of them in hand. But again, going back to the deck, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue cards. And so, like, my sources, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blue sources, which isn't nothing, right? So if I grabbed plains there, it's not like I'm never getting another blue, but at the same time, it's not so many, given the density of blue cards in my deck, that I think that I'm comfortable with that. I'd rather wait on it and also increase my chance of drawing a land on my 2nd draw step due to not having thinned my deck a little bit. So, oh, and also I guess I should comment that if I draw exclusively tap lands by my turn 3, it does slow down my Jewel Thief. So again, there is some real cost to doing this, but I think the likelihood of that is low enough that it warrants holding on to this to maximize my chance of having all 3 colors. So, opponent, luckily no 2-drop on the play here. I don't draw a land, but again, obviously I'm not going to miss my land drop, so here I'm happy to just crack it, and I make the decision to get white because I can get my singleton blue from the Jewel Thief here, and I definitely want to be able to cast the kill shot if I need to play from behind, and this is a decent blocker versus them, so I don't mind if I miss a land drop. This is certainly better than nothing, and I think it's okay to just run out. They have a Jewel Thief. I drew an Informant, draw it. And so here I have a choice. I can discard probably none of the interactive spells, certainly not the Jewel Thief. I could discard my only blue spell, but again, assuming I get to Jewel Thief, then I'm going to be able to cast Run Out of Town. I could discard the 5-drop because I'm pretty far from casting it, but I was thinking that I could discard Initiate, and maybe a little greedy, but I think that if I'm coming from behind, the life gain on this server might be relevant, and I have enough interactive tools. If I never draw another land, I'm not winning this game anyways. And if I do draw another land, I think I have enough things to be doing that it's not imperative that, or it's not necessarily the case that I never get to 5. So I don't know about this one, but this was the thought process. Here, opponent plays sort of a tap sack land, gets a forest, and they swing in for 3. And here I'm making this block. At some point, I'm gonna need to work through their combat tricks, and I don't think that I have enough mana here to have the luxury of taking extra damage while I'm waiting for that time, so that I can set up a place where I have both a blocker and I have a combat trick. The likelihood of that, so that I can blow out their combat trick, is pretty low given that I don't have lands. So I'm just okay to kind of try and grind through their cards. So if they're going to have a trick for me here, fine, I take some damage and they get my informant for their trick, but it uses their turn. Remember that also they didn't have a play on turn 2, right? So what that means is that given they've already played their tap land pre-combat, if they have For the Family here, it's a pretty good guess that they don't have a 2-drop follow-up. So it's going to take their whole turn if they use the combat trick. And so with that in mind, I'm happy to make this block. Note that they don't end up using anything. They just develop their board, play the Gardener. Here I do draw land number 3 and cast Jewel Thief, again making my treasure. Here they play the Rocco, X equals 2, getting the Civil Servant, and pass. So this was really interesting for me. I noticed that before they did that, they did not send the Civil Servant. So that suggests that they either don't have a combat trick or were not willing to use it that turn. It could be the case that their hand is a little clunky, but if I blocked and they used the combat trick, that they wouldn't be able to do anything else and they didn't want to risk that. Or maybe they don't have the combat trick, but it's important to notice things like that, right? What they are doing and not doing. So here my draw step was fish. And so I'm still sitting here on 3 lands, and I have pretty much Libations and Kill Shots as my castable spells. I expect that on their turn, both of these are probably coming in as 3-power attackers, the 3/1 and the Civil Servant. So I took the opportunity to just send here, and the idea was if they don't block, no big deal. I get 3 damage in. And if they do block, well then I have a Libation. And I much rather use the Libation on my turn, where first of all I get a blocker out of it, and second of all they're tapped out. Right, I'm not so enthusiastic, given that I can only cast this for X equals 2, to be blocking one of their creatures and then trying to Libation their 2 3-power attackers. And I'm also not really willing to take the trade for one of these. If I need to, I might, but I'd much rather be able to kill one of these. I guess probably the Roccos, because they're not blocking with a Civil Servant. But I'd much rather kill one of their creatures on my turn when I know I can, than try and gamble that it's going to work out for me on their turn when they have mana up. So here I send in, they block, fortunately. I'm figuring out how much I want to cast this for. I think it doesn't actually matter because I can't do anything else. So I just, X equals 2, pump it, push in some trample damage, make my 1/1, and pass back. Here my opponent plays Informant and cracks the land. Sequencing kind of interesting, by the way. This comes up a lot in this format. In general, I think you should crack your lands before you draw cards, assuming you have enough of them, because again, it thins your deck and makes it so you're more likely to draw spells. And it happens pretty often. The dynamic there being, of course, the earlier you can thin your deck, the more impact that particular thin will have. Because if you thin your deck and the game ends 1 turn later, you got maybe 1 draw step with it. Doesn't really matter that much. If you thin your deck on turn 1 and you spend the entire game with 1 less land in your deck, then it's going to be much more impactful. So that said, I think they likely should have done this before. Maybe they were looking for an untapped land, though. I don't know. I'm not saying they made a mistake, but just a comment on these. So here, and this time they send both. So this is interesting. They've seen, since the Rocco turn last turn where they didn't send with the Gardener, they've since seen 2 new cards. And again, there might have been a chance they had a combat trick and didn't want to risk spending the mana last turn, given that they were spending all of it on the Rocco. So I'm putting them on a combat trick here. I was considering I could double block here on the 2/2. If they have nothing, I'm happy to trade the 1/1 for the 2/2. And if they have a combat trick, I get both creatures. But given how stuck I am on mana, I don't think I can afford to do that. Because let's say they have a combat trick and that trade happens, they still have these two creatures and I don't have anything to do with that, right? I can take some more damage and kill shot one of them, but I can't actually interact beyond that. Again, I remember I do have the treasure from the Jewel Thief, so I can also run out of town at some point, but that seems like a losing strategy versus what they're doing to me, right? Because if I'm just kind of trading their combat tricking creature, and then I take some damage while I kill their other creature, and then I take some more damage probably because they're gonna have follow-ups while I kill another creature. Like, I'm just taking damage and kind of treading water, and it's not like I'm at the end of all this I'm gonna play something that's really good and they can't attack through. I have some 1/1s and a 3/3. Right, so I end up just taking this damage. Here again, I have an option to, again, leave up Libation. I have the option to play this 2/1 out, right? So I have a lot of things that I can be doing. Maybe not a lot. I have some things that I can be doing. And so I have to decide what my plan of action is. I also need to figure out what my combat's going to look like. I could send with this, but again, I can't really pump for that much. I can pump for 2, maybe 3 if I want to use my treasure, but it's my only blue source, so I don't know that I want to use my treasure. If they just block and do nothing, that's pretty bad for me. So I don't send, and I decide to just pass the turn. The idea being that if they were willing to send with this turn, I want to see if they're going to send with it again. If they are, then I can block and maybe blow them out to waste both their mana and get a 2-for-1. And if they're not willing to send this into open mana, that tells me information as well. And so my plan was, if they send it, I'm going to block and use some kind of trick, either the kill shot or the libation, depending on what they do. And if they don't send it, then probably I'm going to still just kill shot one of their attackers. Again, we'll see sort of where it goes. They end up do send with everything. Again, doing this whole interaction, untap the Gardener and then use it to pump the Civil Servant. Here, again, I'm taking some damage, 6 damage, but I'm willing to make this block. And so they go to +2/+2 it. And as a response, I'll kill shot it. If they have like the shield counter thing, then I'm just totally dead. But again, I didn't see it game 1 a lot. It's not a super commonly played card. And I don't know if I was beating it anyways, because I'm going to have to be making blocks this game, and a 1-mana way to kind of blow everything up in combat is going to get me no matter what. So here, fortunately, I end up with a 2-for-1. I take 6. Still no more land. This time, though, I'm planning to play out the Socialite. My plan is to put it in front of the Informant. Notice that the Civil Servant doesn't have attacks at the moment because there's no Citizen. I don't think it's that likely that it's going to stay that way. I think they likely have some Citizen follow-up, meaning this probably is coming in. But I was thinking that this way I can keep up Libation for 1. Again, I still have the treasure over here, and sort of see where this leads. And again, I just want to make the point that it is important that I be developing my board. I can't just like leave stuff up, because if combat doesn't happen and they just like play 2 creatures, yeah, I can run out of town, but first of all, then I'm down 1 mana permanently. I'm out my blue source, and I don't have like great follow-ups, so I do want to be developing my board so that if they do the same and don't want to attack, that again, I'm still making progress on the board. So here, play this out. They Rocco, grabbing a backup agent. Counter goes on the Civil Servant, so it's getting a little big. And they send here. So kind of unfortunate because I can Libation for 1, but then I don't really have good blocks there. Like if I Libation, so I was actually considering, there are some lines where like I Libation pre-combat just to get the extra 1/1, and it grows the socialite. Actually, I think I missed this. I totally missed this when I was playing. I should have done that, I think, because what I would have done is get the 1/1 and then put the 3/2 and the 1/1 in front of the 4/4 and then have the 4/4 thief block here. I would have ended the combat with a 3/3 and a 1/1. I'm down my blue mana, but I have a Jewel Thief and a 1/1 left against their 3/1 and 1/1, which is probably good enough. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I missed that until just now. But I think that might have been better. I'm not entirely sure. And I would have not had to take this 4 damage, so I'd still be at 9. Yeah, I think I messed this one up. But all right, so I take 4 here. And then so here, draw, still no land, so stuck on 3 here. And so this turn, again, now is time for me to keep up this run out of town or this libation, because I can't really add to the board that well. I could play this, but again, it's blocking this, which I already have a good block on. And this thing is coming in for 4, so it's not really blocking this. I'd much rather just have the catch-all answer of the run out of town here. And so here, they send everything. And I have to figure out how my blocks are happening. Note that I am at 5 here. Interestingly enough, if you guys wanted to to pause it and figure out what you would do, feel free. But yeah, so my thought process was something like this. Ideally, I would like this 1/1 to go on the 3/1, right? Obviously, that's a great bluff for me, assuming they have nothing. And so, if that's the case, then then everything's looking very good for me. But well, they certainly don't have nothing, right? That's not the case. They're gonna have something there. So, that said, I was thinking, okay, if I put the 1/1 on the 3/1 and the 3/3 on the 1/1, and they have a combat trick, they probably are just gonna use it on the 3/4 to go for lethal. Or alternatively, they could put it on the backup agent to try and trade here, and then also I would end up taking 3 damage, lose my whole board, and we would be at 3/4 versus. They'd have a 3/4, I'd have nothing on board, and then I'd have to kind of figure out where to go from there, I guess so. The plan being to run out of town. I could run out of town this and let this trade, but then they probably have follow-ups. That's no good for me. I could run out of town this, but then they get it back. I take 3. That's not really great for me. But again, I don't have the luxury of being able to play around everything here. I was also thinking, though, that they could have the Naya Charm, the red, green, white one. Because at the time, so this was my thought process, that when I'm playing an opponent that's in an unusual color combination, because this isn't one of the main ones that people play. I mean, green-white's popular, and I understand that you can get to splashing red, and we've seen that there are these Rockos. But I think the green-red-white charm in that deck is usually pretty good. It goes wide. It can push over for extra trample damage. And also, it's the other mode is... What was it? The 2 creatures, the damage, and it has one more relevant mode, I thought. I'm forgetting what it is at the moment, but it's a reason to be in those colors. So I was trying to think about what could get me and how I can play around that. So that said, I decided on just the regular blocks, 3/3 on 1/1 and 3/1 here. And this way, they do end up having it, so they have the overrun mode. Oh yeah, it's the damage mode is the other one. But then here, everything is +1. And so I use the run out of town to get rid of the civil servant. And so here, the Rocco stays alive, the backup agent dies, but I am taking 3 damage here in trample. So here, still no land, but I decide that I want to develop the board. I'm willing to send here. If they have the +2/+7 and untap, I mean, I'm dead. But also, I was dead to that last turn, so I'm assuming they don't have it. And just play out my 3-drop, use all my mana, develop the board. They send, I block. They play out their 2-3 and pass. And finally, I draw land. So here, again, I'm just willing to send here. I have Libation up. If they have Kill Shot, that's pretty bad for me, but I do want to try and chip in some damage. I still have a blocker up, and I just don't expect that this kind of go wide green, red, white aggro deck is really running a Kill Shot. Again, if I didn't have this creature and I had like actual nothing here, I probably wouldn't attack here. But given that I have a backup, I don't want to miss 3 damage. So here, play this out. And they blitz out the Strong Arm, put the counters on the Servant, and swing with everything, trying to force the chump block here. Fortunately, I have the Libation. So block here, Libation here, block here. And so right now I'm actually looking like I'm in pretty good shape. I draw a blue source. Hit for 4. They play out the server. And then... Okay, actually, back up a little bit. This was a really important turn, it turns out. And I remember deliberating about this a bit. I had to decide whether or not I wanted to play the server or whether I wanted to play the pets. It wasn't really a priority to play the Metropolis Angel at this point. It was between these two. And the argument for playing the pets would be that it gets 2 more creatures on the board and gains me an extra 2 life for the server. And so the argument for the server being that it uses all my mana and that it has 1 extra power, right? So it hits in the air for 3. The 2 fish combined would hit for 2. There's no counters on the board at the moment. And so I made the decision to play the server, which I'm not convinced is correct in hindsight. And we'll see actually a little bit of why that is later. So I gained 3 here, but my thought was that I have some cheaper things still in my deck, and that this gave me the opportunity to double spell maybe, like if I draw a 2-drop, or I have 2 more 1-drops in my deck, that I could double spell with these, and I couldn't with the server. So I thought that maybe I should run this out now. It's also a little bigger, so it applies a little bit more pressure, which maybe doesn't really matter. The odds that the clock ends up off by exactly however much extra damage the server would have done compared to the pets, I think is pretty small chance, given how big a chunks we're going to be hitting them in. But yeah, I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure, but in hindsight, I think it may have been right to play the exotic pets first to gain the life. They do have some blitz creatures in here, and we did see the Gilded Pinions in game 1, which, again, I'm a little light to flyers. I have 1 of my own, maybe 2 of my own, but yeah. So anyways, I ended up with a server here. They play Rumor Gatherer, and so here I'm just sending it all. I don't want to send this at the moment. I'd rather just spend my mana doing this stuff. Now it doesn't matter that like I'm playing this over this, because again I already gained the life, so the extra bodies don't matter, and this has higher power and can swing in the air for 3. So I just went ahead and did this, spent more of my mana. Same argument, I can double spell if I draw something with the pets. Opponent plays Cleanup Crew, gaining 4 and scrying, and this is really important. So the opponent scries 1 to the top, and obviously we can't see this part of it from the 17 lands review, but they did it very quickly, and it occurred to me that that was something to take note of during the game. And so here I draw, and I send with both my flyers, and the second I hit attack and confirm the attack, I realized I'm an idiot. Of course they topped quickly because it's a Gilded Pinions, which I saw in game 1. And so I think that this was a mistake, a clear mistake on my part. I had the tell that they had something relevant. They kept on top. They did it quickly. They seemed like they were excited about it. And I think that I could have beat a Gilded Pinions from here. I could have either held both back to try and trade, which I'm actually not that excited about. I think even better still, I could have held one of them back and hit for 3 in the air, made this. If they play Pinions and swing to force the chump block, then I'm hitting back for then I can hold the other flyer back, and I'm hitting for quite a bit, I think. They haven't seemed like they were doing that much, because again, they spent a full turn just playing the Rumor Gatherer. And I think I win that race. So like imagine they go to 12 here, and then they play Pinions and hit, I chump. but I play the fish. Then I hit them for 3, 4, 5, and either another 5, hitting them for 10, putting them to 2, or they chump block here, and then I get a chump here and have a big attack the following turn, and I get to see some more draw steps. So I know some people think that like maybe it's too scared, but I think my position is so strong here, given and the fact that I've seen the opinions. I thought this was a mistake the second I hit attack, and I just didn't stop long enough to think about it. So I kind of threw this game, I think. And again, of course, they draw its opinions, put it on here, and I would want to make the point too that when you review your games, like, on one hand, it's important to be objective about why you lost and to be honest with yourself about it. Like, if you really lost because you got mana screwed or because you didn't draw lands, that happens to everyone. No worries, right? But here you'll notice I was stuck on 3 lands for, I think, like 16 or 17 cards deep into my deck. But I still think I should have won this game, right? I don't say, well, I lost because I got mana screwed, because I didn't. I was able to fight through the mana screw, and I still probably, I obviously you don't know what else they had or what their draw steps are like, but I think I could have won this game for sure, and I threw it away because I made a bad decision. So again, just something to think about. I even had the read on the opinions just a half second too late after I sent the creatures. So yeah, it was pretty bad. They play and on to game 3. So for this one, Clear Keep, I have all 3 colors of mana. And so this one was kind of an interesting one as far as the early game sequencing. I think a lot of people would default to playing Broker's Hideout turn 1, getting Island, with the expectation that they have the fish and they have the Initiate. They'll have all 3 colors, and that way they just get their tap land out. But I was thinking about it, and even with all 3 colors, I still want to draw at least one more land here at some point, right? Because I have a 4-drop and I have a 5-drop. It's not super imperative that the 5-drop needs to hit on turn 5, but it's more impactful if it does. And so I actually didn't want to thin my deck of a land quite yet. I wanted one extra draw step with that extra land in my deck. So I decided to play the Plains, and I figured given that I'm playing the Plains, I'll play the Initiate. And then while I was doing this, I had the thought, okay, and if I draw the an Informant, I admit this is worse because, again, going Informant into pets is huge, but I only have 2 Informants in my deck of 33 cards, and again, I would like to hit one more land drop. And even if I hit the Informant, I still have the option to play it on turn 2 because I have this untapped Forest. And then I have maybe some outs to draw an untapped blue source and still be able to get the pets. So I just decided that I would go Plains first and play out the Initiate. And then I draw the Informant, and I say, okay, so turn 2 Informant's still a great play. But then when I play it, I don't play it yet. I think I was thinking maybe I should have played it, but I think my thought process was I wanted to wait on the Connive one turn. So a lot of times, I think that sometimes people run out their Connive, not necessarily Informant, because you usually want to play this early, but sometimes they run out their Connive at times when both lands and spells are good draws for them. And by waiting on that decision, you get to make a more informed decision. So here there were a couple things happening. I wanted to thin my deck before I connived, I think was my thought process at the time. And then also I wanted to make sure I had blue mana. Again, I'm very unlikely to hit untapped blue source here, so I'm probably going to need to hit blue eventually anyways. And I wanted to make a more informed decision when I connived this. So yeah, so I don't play the turn 2 Informant. But it did occur to me at this point, I made what I think was a pretty subtle mistake and something that I'm going to take away from these games, in that I don't think I should have played the Initiate turn 1. Like my regular heuristic of I should use my mana because I can, I think was a mistake here, because it occurred to me I really want the counter on this Informant, right? So I will need to discard a spell. I prefer not to discard my 5-drop, right? I'm even playing so that I plan to play it, right? That's why I wanted the extra land draw. And again, the Informant is great with the Angel with the counter, and it's better even with the pets with the counter. And so I actually could have held this. There's no urgency to play this, right? Because if I was planning to play the tap land turn 2 anyways, I could have just played this turn 2, and if I drew the informant, then I could have discarded the initiate, right? So I didn't know I had the informant at the time, but what do I gain? They don't have a 1-drop. Even if they do, all this is doing is being defensive. There's no urgency to play it turn 1, right? And so now I'm going to have to discard a real spell to get the counter on the informant instead of discarding this initiate. This is just kind of nothing. I'm on the play, and I don't really need a 0-4 at the moment, right? So I think this was actually a pretty big mistake, not the sequencing of the lands, but rather the fact that I played this initiate when, had I drawn the informant, I could have made the decision to hold this in hand. Here they play an informant of their own. I play mine because, again, I think it's a priority to get the counter on it before all this other stuff starts coming down. And then, again, notice I discarded the 5-drop. I do have 4 lands, but this gives me this plus the pets with a counter on it is just an incredible engine, and this is my only piece of interaction. So, as is, the fact that I really want the counter here, I'm discarding the 5-drop. Again, could have been this. So here, they play out the pinions, and another informant, discarding a land, I think, yeah, here. And they just pass. Again, no attacks into the 0-4. Here, very fortunate draw. I draw the Protector. So I'm just going to hold up. If they attack, I can play the Swooping Protector and go for a free card. And if they don't attack, then I'm just going to play the pets, probably followed by the Angel, and just start drawing a million cards. So here, they play out the Jewel Thief, making a treasure, then use 2 mana to equip the informant. They're tapped out. And so here I get my free creature, which very lucky for me. My draw step is Boon of Safety, so I'm just running super lucky this game, even playing fairly poorly, right? Then I get to put the boon. So here's what I do. I swing with both. I'm fully expecting a block here because why wouldn't you block there? You're happy to get a trick for this 2-1 probably from their perspective anyways. They go for the block, instant speed, put the boon on it, and then while both counters are on, play the fish, getting both of them. And I put both counters on the same fish. I haven't seen pacifism from them, and this way it protects the unblockable fish, and also I get an extra power with my shield counter. If I split them, then if I ever block with the shield counter creature, I only get 1 power on that block, where here I end up with 2. Again, I don't look like I'm blocking from here, but, still, I think this is better. It's worse against, pacifism effects, or if they randomly have, like, a bounce spell, but I think most of what they're doing, it's better against. Here, they play Strong Arm, which that's actually like kind of a very good card for them here, because a 5/5 Vigilance is definitely dangerous. So like I'm not just winning yet. So here I block the 2/3 and I take 5 as I have no good blocks. Again, I could block with just a shield counter thing, but it tramples, so I'm only preventing a little damage. And so they draw their card, untap, draw. Right, so the Broker's Charm can't actually kill this now. I mean, I guess you could combo it with like a shield or something, but here my plan is to just try and race a little bit. Again, 1 more land, and this is eventually a 5-power attacker also. And they have to spend mana if they want to start flying stuff over. So here, I'm just sending all of these guys as I don't have attacks on the ground, and I want to draw a card. Libation's good to see. They send for 5. I'm not in chump block mode yet. I think they're at 13. I'm going to be going to 11, but I have a Libation to win the race, so I'm not super concerned yet. And so then they play the Voice, which now things are getting a little scary because they can do things like Gilded Pinions here, and then turn this into a really big trampler and have an evasive threat in the air. Or they have, notice they discarded earlier this Revelation, but if they have a second one, they can fly both their creatures, make a giant flying trampler with life. So there are some dangerous things for me here, and I need to be kind of careful about how I navigate it. So fortunately, I draw a kill shot, which very lucky for me because, again, I don't think they have a great way to interact with it. And I can chump block this forever. I don't care about this thing. I care about the trample. And so at the moment, this is a very lucky draw. Here, I thought about sending everything just to apply the most pressure, but again, I'm not so convinced that I want to do that. There are ways I can die here. I'd rather keep this back to block in the air if they fly the voice, and then have an answer for the trampler here. And I also don't think that it changes the clock much to send an extra 2 damage. So here I'm sending for 6, putting them to 7. And I still have a libation, so if they use all their mana, then they're going to be dead next turn, right? Because I can hit for 6. Even if they kill this, then a land puts them dead with the libation. So I'd rather keep this back and not die in the air, given that I think I'm very likely to win the following turn anyways. And I'm just going to keep up the kill shot here. They send, and I kill shot before blocks because I want to know if it resolves first. If, for example, they did randomly have the shield card to prevent the kill shot from working, then I would want to know that before I make my blocks, because I think there's a very real chance that I end up chump blocking here to prevent 4 damage. But it resolves. Before it resolves, they use this to deal 2 to the initiate. And so here I have a free block on it as they targeted the ability from the voice onto the other one. And so they have Broken Wings here, killing the 3/1. And I hit the land, and they scoop, because again, they realize I can turn this into a 5/5, and they're getting hit for lethal. So, yeah, handful of really crazy games there. I think that I made a decent amount of mistakes, but this is sort of how I go through and look at my games. And after the fact, rather than just notice them, like what mistakes I made or what things I could have done differently, I like to make it a point to think about what conclusions I made from my games. So thinking about what we did here, so we had our 3 games. Here, this one was kind of a pretty bad mistake, like pretty basic one. It's not like anything profound here. I shouldn't have taken this block. I honestly don't know why I did. I think every now and then everyone does some dumb stuff that they shouldn't, and they know they shouldn't. And so yeah, that was a pretty bad block. And that was the major thing from this game. So again, not too much to be learned from there, other than I guess being more diligent about your basics and just never taking for granted that you're going to do the right thing and being actively engaged all the time. Looking here over at game 2, I think the big thing to take away from this was the scry turn. Right, so I missed an interaction, remember, with a libation and the socialite on one of the blocks, which I think I made the wrong play. But the thing that really cost me the game, because I still got to the end here, was this attack right here. I knew they scried one to the top. It might have been a trample trick. They scried to the top. I don't know. But the point being that I knew they had something relevant. I also knew from game 1 that they have pinions in their deck, and I definitely think it was wrong to send both here. So I think the idea being I should have spent more time to have reflected on their scry, specifically what was it that they scried. And yeah, I just realized a little too late, and by then, again, nothing I can do. And then for me, the probably most new thing that I learned here was involving the Broker's Initiate and the sequencing in the early turns of this game. It's not intuitive to me that I should not have played this, given that I was decided on playing untapped planes. And so this is something I'm going to be looking out for in decks, especially given that Connive is a mechanic for the set, that I shouldn't take it for granted that I should just be playing cards out because I can. Most of the time, you want to be using your mana, but this is a really, really interesting thing for me. And so I'm going to keep that in mind in my future games. And just really quick, I did want to make the point that, again, you want to be pretty aware of what you lose and win to, and you don't just want to be hypercritical just for the sake of being critical. So I wanted to point out, for example, I had another game here, kind of an interesting one actually, if we wanted to take a look. I tried a Golgari deck just for fun, and I actually think that even despite the bad record, the deck was maybe a little better than its record, and that there might be something here, because with some things like Fake Your Own Death, usually you don't get to interact with some of the green creatures that have relevant ETBs. The trample on the Jewel Thief is pretty nice with the Fake Your Death, and again, getting treasure tokens can be relevant. And then I just had the regular black package, right? Silencer, Fake Your Death, Nightclubber, Fake Your Death, all pretty good. And also the Fake Your Death kind of good with the Strong Arm. But this is kind of just getting sidetracked. The main point I wanted to show bringing this up is, so here I had this game, right? And I had a turn 2 Court Official. This was on a Malta 6. And here, again, 2 lands, draw a card, 2 lands, discard. Opponent's playing a Planeswalker in their, and Elspeth particularly in their green, red, black deck, right? And so, like, games like this, I mean, I don't think you should be too hard on yourself. Like, it's a clear keep, right? I had 2 lands, a turn 2 play, and like 2 Jewel Thieves and a Murder. Like, I almost couldn't ask for a better 6. And so, like, make it a point that you're not being critical and saying, like, oh, I should win this game because blah, 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 blah. Like, you should be very objective in both directions, right? Whether, you did anything wrong or not. But just to make the point that it's not being critical for the sake of being critical. So yeah, hope this was useful to someone, if anyone happened to watch all the way through it. And yeah, good luck with the drafts, everyone.